Afternoon, thank you for coming to my session this afternoon. Let me just start my stopwatch off. I registered for the conference and then had a call to say, would I do a speaking slot? And I wasn't sure whether people would find it interesting or not, so I've tried to pick a subject area that will probably give you something that's new to you this afternoon, but you'll see some common challenges for all of us as well, I think. So if I click here, there we go. So the agenda I'm going to go through is a bit about Birmingham Airport, put us into context. Has anyone not flown from an airport? Okay, interestingly, if my wife was in the room, she would put her hand up. She's never flown in her life. She never will. I've got a pilot's license. She won't fly with me. She's probably seen my driving, so that probably explains why. So people think they know about airports. Like I say, I'm going to give you some facts and figures about those. Look at our regulatory challenges, some of our practical challenges, and I put solutions with a question mark there because I'm not a vendor. I haven't got a table outside with lots of goodies on it. I haven't got the answer to everything. I've got lots of problems, and I haven't got the solution to all of them yet. So I'll explain those as I go through. Bit about Birmingham. Anyone here from London? Okay, so Birmingham is the second city in the UK. It's a bit north, about 110 miles north of Birmingham. 1 million people live in the Birmingham itself, with 10 million in the local catchment area. Some interesting facts: it's got more canals than Venice. It's got the most Michelin-starred restaurants outside of London in the UK. It's the youngest city in Europe. I don't mean the newest, I mean youngest. If you go out on a Friday night, it's got the highest proportion of 18 to 24-year-old people in Europe. It's got the largest local authority in Europe, because London chops its up into different authorities. And it's got an airport there, just 8 miles south of the city, where I've worked for the last 30 years, and we now handle 13 million passengers a year. So with a 10 million catchment area, we're doing okay. We're obviously stealing a few off some other airports in the local area. So, as I said, people think they know an airport, and that we are up against in terms of cyber security. I'm sure we've all got one of these slides, which we've used for different presentations when we want to get funding and the like. Here's some old ones to try and get the board on board to show them how important cyber security is. But there's a report that came out last year from the NCSC, and this is how it was reported, that there's going to be a major life-threatening cyber attack on the UK, which is in little doubt in the near future. Now, did anyone read the 2018 NCSC cyber report? Yeah, I read it. Do you remember reading that in it? I don't. When I saw that, I went back to it and read it again and tried to find that statement in there. It doesn't actually report it like that. It actually says something along the lines of there's going to be a major Category A attack is likely. And then a major category on the NCSC systems, one of the possible outcomes of many outcomes is that it could involve a loss of life. So there's a bit of journalistic interpretation there. But that obviously caught my attention because not only do I look after IT and information security, so I've been running backwards and forwards between the two rooms here today. Airport IT is split into two parts, which I'll come on to show you in a minute. But a few years ago, we insourced air traffic control. So at most airports in the UK, air traffic control is under the control of the NATS, National Air Traffic Services. It was getting a bit pricey at Birmingham, so we thought we'll have a go at doing it ourselves. Why don't we insource it? We were one of the first airports to do this, which was all great from a commercial point of view. You know, the air traffic controllers now work for Birmingham Airport. They're part of our same company. Everything's fine until I realised that the cyber security responsibility for ATC systems then came under my responsibility. So when I saw a headline like that, I did sit up a bit and think, okay, I'm not paid enough. Other bodies involved, which brings me on to the regulatory challenges that I have to deal with. I have to say, I think I was involved with cybersecurity before it was a thing, before it was trendy to do so, before we had CISOs and people on the board at this level. And because of that, we've been recognised as being, a good practice airport in cybersecurity. Whereas what I think we're doing is just the basics, really, and hopefully getting them right. And I'm doing that not because we're part of critical national infrastructure, which we are. I'm doing it just because we've got shareholders and I need to make money for the shareholders. We're a private business. We're not part of a bigger group like BAA or the Manchester Airport Group. We're an individual, standalone airport, and I need to make a return for my shareholders, so they keep paying me and they pay for my pension. And we're not part of government either, and we don't get any funding from government. But a lot of the attacking organisations, which I'll come on to, in some countries the airports are tied to the government, so that means that they're seen as a legitimate target by some of these groups. So going back to this one, so there's us at the bottom. We have to answer to the Civil Aviation Authority, who is our aviation government body in the UK, and they have a lovely document called CAP 1574. Is anyone else in the room covered by the NIST directive here? Yeah, lovely, isn't it? CAA have just done a big U-turn on the NIST directive, so I've now got a new one arrived this week. They're saying scrap CAP 1574, it's now CAP 1753. Love them. Meeting on Friday about that. So above them, we've got the National Cyber Security Centre and the Department of Transport, and they are the designated authority for the NIST directive for us. But it doesn't stop there. Above them, we've got the UK government, and then at the moment, who can say, we've got the EU government above them. And the EU government isn't full of cybersecurity experts, but they do have panels and other meeting groups. One of them's called ECAC, the European Civil Aviation Conference. I translate that as committee, for cybersecurity in civil aviation. And they produce guidance material for the EU government. And all these bodies are now just beginning to think about, perhaps we ought to think about cybersecurity in some way. And can we make it fit with what we've got at the moment, or do we need to put new stuff in there? And they're sort of forgetting at the bottom of this chain, there's me in purple there, who's receiving all these different regulations that are coming down to us. Doesn't stop there. We've got ENISA and the European NIST directive people. And then in the aviation world, we've got ICAO. ICAO is the world governing body for civil aviation. And then below them we've got EASA, which is the European Aviation Safety Agency. I do know some of these. They've got their own documents which they've produced, which are now filtering through ECAC, through the EU government, down to me to comply with as well. We've got ESCP, which is the group that created the stuff for EASA. They've got the Cyber Security Regulatory Regime. And then on the right-hand side there, we've got all the trade bodies, ACI being one of them, Airport Councils International, ACI Cyber Task Force. The important thing there is each one of those where there's an asterisk by them, we have some involvement in at Birmingham. So we're very fortunate to be plugged in at the UK government side of things, but also at the EU government side of things. And I think that came out of the fact that we were sort of early adopters of cybersecurity and got involved with this with those guys early on. And why are all these bodies interested? Mainly because of delivery of service of the aviation business to either UK or EU business. We are seeing attacks like most of you, I imagine, from hostile states. So we get attacked by the Chinese, the Russians, and more recently the Iranians. Terrorist organisations, ISIS and Daesh are after us. I don't know if you might probably seen the LinkedIn one where you get the attractive lady who wanted to connect with you. That's Daesh agents at the back of that. Hacktivists, obviously people think that airports are very environmentally unfriendly, so we've got those knocking on the door. Organised crime through the normal ransomware, and also the teenagers in the bedroom, who also think we're a good target because we have a public image. So practical challenges. So you can see there we've got sort of business IT, which is what every company has, I imagine. We've got data services, we've got service management, we've got infrastructure services, the standard stuff. We then have operational IT, and I talk about that in terms of airport operational IT, not operational IT. So I'm talking about bag systems, passenger systems, and airport management systems. I define my critical systems as any system that can delay a passenger getting on a plane, a bag getting on the plane, or the plane getting off the ground. Those are my three categories for critical systems. Then I've got air traffic control systems, just to make life interesting, and I've got compliance and governance hanging on the right-hand side there. Saying all that, we're only a company of about 1,000 employees. We've got about 14 people in IT, and 5 of those do one role, but I have IT on site 24 hours a day now. So they're on a shift system. I've got 3 in information security at the moment. That's soon to be in June, when we take a new guy on. And we know we're getting about 2,000 attacks per day from the analysis that we do of what's going on. So to make this take one particular strand of the sort of the passenger journey. You arrive and you go through check-in, you go through security, your bag goes off into some black hole in the wall, you go into the lanes, you go to the gate, you get on the plane. I could talk all day about all that, but I'm going to stick to one particular subsystem of that, which is the check-in system. Now, who hasn't used a check-in system at the airport anywhere? Great, so we're all experts in check-in systems. Some stats there, we have 116 check-in desk positions, split between 2 terminals. We've got departure gate, which uses the same system. We've got busing lounges, all the stuff you can see on the slide there. The strange thing is, I buy check-in systems. Every 5 years I go to market and buy a new one, and yet I've never used one in my life. No one from Birmingham Airport has ever used one in their life. We just buy it, and then we sort of sublet it on a paid a cost per passenger basis to the airlines. So the airlines use the system, right? Well, no, they don't use it either. We charge the airlines, but then they subcontract it to handling agents. So airlines don't have, unless you're sort of British Airways in T5 at Heathrow, you don't have sufficient flights to have your own staff on site all day, every day. Agents, and they're the ones who actually utilise the system. So you can imagine the project for buying a check-in system and the stakeholders involved in that is it's very interesting. And just to prove it, there's a picture of a check-in desk with 2 handling agent staff behind them. They're in blue and white at the moment, but later on in the day, they might be in the Emirates uniform or the Thomson uniform, Thomas Cook uniform, whatever, because airlines like them to appear as if they're working for them, but really they're a separate handling agent. On this slide, I would like you to notice the baggage system, which sort of goes at the side there and goes behind them, and the actual system that sorts the bags is behind that wall. Remember that, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Most people don't see behind the check-in desk. This one has been cleaned up, especially for the photograph. They're normally the most grubbiest, dirty places you can imagine. It's not glamorous at all. We've got very old-fashioned kit there. I say to people, if you think about IT and aviation, think 10 to 15 years ago, and then you're sort of getting close. And as an example of that, we've just got rid of our last fax machine. So it was secure. Those printers there, £1,000 each. Very expensive kit on there on check-in desks, and very grubby. So, and this is how the system all hangs together. If you were starting from today, you wouldn't design a system like this, believe me. So here's our banks of check-in desks down the bottom here. All they are is sort of like terminal emulators. And what the aim of the game is to get to one of these departure control systems, or DCSs, the airlines contract to. And these are situated all around the world. And I'll pick a particular example in a minute. So you're down here, you check into a system, it goes through our servers. We've got 2 in 2 data centres, split across 2 sites in case one burns down. You go through some gateways and you go out to one of the DCSs that's out there in the big wide world. And the Codeco one that's up there is situated in San Francisco. That's got to get its boarding card back and bag tag back to a printer here. So it comes back from San Francisco. As I said, 15 years ago, don't think about cloud services, don't think about anything like that. This is point to point. Back through our infrastructure, back to the check-in desk, and now it spews your bag tag and your boarding card. So everyone's happy. This system then knows about your bags. No other system knows at that point, and yet we've got to sort the bags in a minute. When they're going down the racetrack and down the conveyor belts, we've got to sort them out into the right aircraft. So this system then has to send a message to our baggage system that it knows about this bag. So it actually sends a message, it comes out here, it's called a BSM, and it trundles its way through to a computer. We're using one in London at the moment through CETA, gets split into two. We have to reconcile the bag with the baggage reconciliation to guard against what happened in Lockerbie, where someone got on a plane, checked in a bag for a plane, didn't get on themselves. So we have to reconcile now, and the other one goes to our sort allocation computer. And if I just go back a couple of slides, the sort allocation computer is behind that wall. Signal from that desk to behind that wall, it goes out via San Francisco, comes back to London, to the computer there. Great, isn't it? And even more interestingly, this message that comes out here and goes along here is a telex message. Cool. It's not IP, it's not XML, it's nothing like that. They don't speak those languages. It's a multi-line, for the young people in the room, it's a multi-line message that's sent in plain text, which if you know what the slashes are on the code mean, actually read yourself. These are some of my challenges. Right. Everyone with me so far? I will be testing you at the end. So, if we think it's about the check-in system, because there's all these different bodies involved, it's quite a complex, well, quite a long, complex supply chain. So there we are at the bottom. There's our BHX check-in. We use a product called Arink, but there's a few out there. There's Maternus, there's a few check-in systems, doesn't matter. We outsource the support for that system to a separate company. In our case, it's DSP. The system runs in a hosted data center, and the data center has support and maintenance staff coming in from the left-hand side there. So already from our one system, we've got potentially 4 companies involved in supporting that. I have a contract with one of them, the one in blue there. These other ones, I have no contractual relationship with at all, but they could all introduce something into the system. They could manipulate the data in some way. They could affect the availability of the system. Then we've got the handling agent. I have no contractual arrangement with the handling agents. They're subcontractors of the airlines, and yet they're the people with their fingers on the keyboards on my system. They send their data through to a departure control system, which are then in their own data centers, which are hosting the support and maintenance, and they have their own support companies. Some of them are in-house, some of them aren't. And the numbers up the right-hand side there are the potential number of companies involved at each step of the way. And the reservation system sits on top of that. So when you log into the website to buy your Ryanair ticket or your EasyJet ticket, whatever it is, you're logging into the reservation systems, which are also supported in data centers and have separate support companies looking after those as well. So if I add all those up correctly, I think it's about 138 different suppliers just to get you checked in when you get to the airport. And we're a medium-sized airport. Think about Heathrow. They're a lot bigger. When I had the numbers up, I was surprised, and I'm supposed to know this stuff. Solutions, regulation I've put on there. By all these bodies getting involved and saying you must, Mr. Airport, make sure your airport is secure against the cyber attack, I've been turning around to the likes of the CAA and the DFT and even at the European level and going, that's all very well me, but have you seen this chain here of all this stuff and all these other people that could be involved? Some of them are, the airlines, or some airlines are involved in things like the NIST directive. Things like handling agents at the moment aren't. and some of the critical suppliers like CETA and Amadeus, they aren't at the moment, but they probably will be in the next generation. I try and work in partnership with organisations I have no contractual relationship with. So handling agents is the great one. On site at Birmingham, there's probably about 800 staff from Swissport. So they're a very large company. Again, no contractual relationship with them, but we try and work in partnership with them where we can, because they have some key nuggets of information that we want, and we have some that they want. So we get together and say, well, what if we collaborate and share this stuff, for the advantage of both of us. And that leads us on to aviation standards. There's a raft of standards in aviation, and there's a called ED2. The risks associated with sharing data between different bodies. So in those cases, those are actually helping us, unlike a lot of regulation that just gets in our way. And obviously where we can, we've got the contracts and agreements in place for processing different data and the like. Okay, so get the solutions again. This is a slide I saw someone, well, it's different, slightly different. I saw someone present earlier in the week about how the CEO sleeps at night, the CFO and the COO, and then there's me on the end. And that's half my job, the other half is the IT job as well. Hope that was interesting. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Wayne?
Anything you ever wanted to know about an airport, we're too afraid to ask.
I can show you supply chain and the risks that brings to the airport operation. Who's leading the charge for modernisation?
The airports. So we all know each other. There's probably 7 or 8 large airports in the UK. Anyone would like to guess how many actual airports there are?
1,200?
Crikey, 53.
What, including all the little ones?
All the little ones, 53. So there's about 7 or 8 of the big ones, and we all know each other. We all meet together. We're actually meeting on Friday in London, and we do our best to lobby the likes of the CAA and DFT, and then feed that back up to the European level, which then gets into the red strip, which is the aviation strip. It's a very slow process. It's a very slow process. It's very highly regulated. They don't like to change things because they've always done them that way. Look at the telex messages, for goodness sake.
So as a follow-up, do you think it's going to take a major breach into that system that's going to speed things up? Because looking at that as an outsider, not knowing airports, there's huge risk there, there's huge vulnerability to be exploited by very different.
That there is, and unfortunately, I think sometimes that's the way things go. After a breach, people start to wake up and look at things. But I think in terms of modernising the whole system, the aviation industry has to look at the lowest common denominator. So if you've got like a tiny airstrip, in the Amazon forest or something, as I listened to the radio on the way down, they're not going to have these massive systems. They might just have a fax machine and a telephone. So, or a telex machine. That it's the lowest common denominator that all airports have got to be able to talk if they want to go on the network. And it's changing those and getting them up to the next level, which might just be IP or XML or something. It's a big, big challenge. And because it's so big and it's worldwide, it's also very expensive to change. So, the old adage, if it hasn't broke, why fix it? It works until something, terrible happens, yeah. That's just my personal view. Not the view of Birmingham Airport, my personal view. Anyone else?
I've got a question. So you've got both hats,
Yes.
right? Is that a challenge?
Yes.
And how do you combat that?
Up until 2 years ago, roughly 2.5 years ago, we didn't have board level representation of either IT or information security. So it's sort of one step at a time, really. I was fortunate enough to be promoted into that role. Again, it's like taking tiny steps. That's the first stage. You don't want to be too frightening to these people to then go, oh, I think we ought to split my role, and then we need 2 of us on the board. It's like, hang on, you've got 1 technical expert up there now. So it's tiny steps for what is a small to medium-sized company. But there are times where I represent my head of IT, Joanne, who's wanting to do things and implement things, and then I've got Christy, who's my head of information security, going, yeah, hang on, security, and sometimes I don't know which way to turn. Being the same person looking for both of them, really. I argue against myself a lot of the time.